A tunnel between Brooklyn and the Battery in Lower Manhattan was one of several traffic relief projects in the late 1930s to remedy vehicle congestion on New York City's existing thoroughfares. Extending just over 9,000 feet, this tunnel is the longest continuous underwater vehicle tunnel in North America. Upon its construction, it had been featured in popular movies, served an essential purpose in one of New York City's darkest days, and was even the cause of some destruction. Needless to say, this New York City tunnel has been part of many historic moments. Today, we discover the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel throughout history. I'm your host, Ryan Socash, and you're watching It's History. We have covered nearly all of New York's significant tunnels and are considering moving on to episodes about European infrastructure, much of which was built for military purposes. In doing my research, I came across The Secrets of the Maginot Line, a documentary on Magellan TV, and let me tell you, this is a must-see for anyone who loves tunnels. You see, this line of fortifications covers a vast amount of land and is often connected via a network of tunnels featuring a narrow-gauge railway. This extraordinary film taught me not only what effect the marvel had on the progression of history, but also just how complex the underground engineering was. Basically, you have to see the film for yourself, and I've got great news. Thanks to our sponsor, Magellan TV, all It's History fans can watch it free with my special link in the description. Let me explain. Magellan TV is a documentary streaming service founded by filmmakers with the most varied history content available anywhere. Actually, 15 to 20 hours of new content is added each week with a growing collection of 4K, high-definition content for no additional cost. So you'll never run out of something to watch. In addition to history, subscribers enjoy other extensive collections of science, true crime, travel, and more with zero ads, anytime, anywhere, and on all major devices. Like I said before, our viewers get the first month totally free, and after that, you can take advantage of an annual membership for $59.88. You only pay $4.99 a month for 3,500 hours of documentaries. So click the link in the description below for your first full month for free. Proposals for a crossing between the Battery Park in Lower Manhattan and the Red Hook section of Brooklyn had been around since 1929. At that time, city planners noted that the Williamsburg's Manhattan and Brooklyn bridges carried 150,000 vehicles per day and projected that this number would double in the years ahead. So a solution was imminent. Originally envisioned as a 3-tube, 6-lane tunnel, the proposed tunnel, which also had the support of Mayor Guardia, was approved by the New York City Board of Estimate in November of 1930. Funds, however, were low, with the Queens-Midtown tunnel still under construction. Basically, the Public Works Authority and the Reconstruction Finance Corporation could not finance the project sufficiently. Hence, Mayor LaGuardia reluctantly asked Robert Moses, the chairman of the Triborough Bridge Authority, for the funds. Moses said he could supply more than $30 million, but only at the price of taking over the Tunnel Authority, which was in charge of the Queens-Midtown Tunnel and the Battery Tunnel. With Moses now in control of the Battery crossing, he changed the original plan from a 6-lane tunnel crossing to a 6-lane bridge crossing. This change reflected the values of the bankers that would finance such a project, that a bridge would be built for less money, cost slightly less to operate, and carry more traffic. Moreover, this change reflected his philosophy, his eagerness to build impressive monuments for all to see. According to an aide, Moses regarded a tunnel as, quote, but a hole in the ground. Surprisingly, unlike many of Moses's previous projects, the Brooklyn Battery Bridge proposal fomented opposition from New York City's business and political establishments, as well as the influential Regional Plan Association. In the end, it took the intervention of President Franklin D. Roosevelt to stop the Brooklyn Battery Bridge project from moving forward. A tunnel was a better option, and hence was finally approved. However, Robert Moses abhorred the idea of a tunnel, even though a bridge would drastically reduce the size of Battery Park, destroying even more areas than the neighborhoods the tunnel would already demolish. Moses was adamant that a bridge was the only option. Still, the general public thought it would be an eyesore on the Manhattan skyline. Most were displeased with the idea of devoting such a large area of Manhattan to a bridge entrance instead of a livable, walkable area. Despite this, Moses refused to budge until the president stepped in and told him that a tunnel was the only option. So Moses begrudgingly gave in, although he demanded that the walls be changed to fit his preferred, quote, safer finishing. And so it was. The Brooklyn Battery Bridge proposal was killed, officially, on July the 17th, 1939, when the Secretary of War under the Roosevelt administration said the proposed crossing would be seaward of Brooklyn Navy Yard. According to the War Department, the proposed bridge would have not only been vulnerable to attack in the event of a war, but also blocked access to the Naval Yard. However, it could be argued that this was a ludicrous objection, since the Brooklyn and Manhattan bridges were downstream of the Navy Yard. In the end, perhaps this decision stemmed from the long-standing grudge between Moses and Roosevelt. Under the direction of Ole Singstad of the New York City Tunnel Authority, construction of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel commenced in October of 1940. Initially scheduled for completion in 1943, work on the tunnel was halted due to World War II-induced steel and iron shortages. When construction resumed in late 1945, Moses and the newly combined Tri-Borough Bridge and Tunnel Authority would be charged with finishing the tunnel, which was made possible with more than 1 million pounds of dynamite used to bore through the rocks beneath New York Harbor. About 13,900 tons of steel, 205 cubic yards of concrete, 1,871 miles of electrical wire, 883,391 bolts, and 799,000 wall and ceiling tiles went into the structure. In addition, about 93,600 tons of cast iron were used to line the tunnel. Ventilation was provided by 53 fans, operated by 104 motors that released 6,152,000 cubic feet of fresh air into the tunnel. The grand opening occurred on May the 25th, 1950, at a staggering $90 million. President Roosevelt himself attended the tunnel's groundbreaking ceremony. The 9,117-foot-long tunnel became the world's longest continuous underwater vehicle tunnel and was a success from the beginning, carrying approximately 41,000 vehicles per day during its first full year of operation in 1951. By 1965, revenues from the Brooklyn Battery and Queens-Midtown tunnels, projects both initially opposed by Moses, generated nearly one-third of his department's revenue. At the Manhattan approach, Moses constructed the Battery Parking Garage, which continues to be operated by MTA Bridges and Tunnels, the successor of the Tri-Borough Bridge and Tunnel Authority. Ironically, Moses continued to gripe about the tunnels being built instead of a bridge decades later in his memories. These tunnels did come at a cultural cost. Unfortunately, the construction of the tunnels meant the destruction of Little Syria. Starting in the 1880s, people from the Middle East began arriving at New York's immigrant processing station. More specifically, these were immigrants from Greater Syria, which at the time was a part of the Ottoman Empire. The Syrians of Old New York were mostly Christians who brought their trade, culture, and cuisine to the streets of Lower Manhattan. Many also headed over to Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn as well, creating another district for Middle Eastern American culture, which would outlast the older Manhattan area. Specifically, before the construction of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, the place that its Manhattan entrance now occupies was the neighborhood called Little Syria. That title might have been a little inaccurate, as immigrants from over 27 countries called the area home. Though they were diverse, these inhabitants shared one thing in common: the Arabic language. When the city decided to construct the tunnel, they invoked eminent domain and forced residents to relocate with just several days' notice. The neighborhood was razed, and now only a few remnants remain, like the St. George Syrian Melkite Catholic Church. But that's not the end of the story here, as another neighborhood was also affected: the neighborhood of Red Hook. The neighborhood of Red Hook was named by the Dutch for its red soil and became a key port during the 19th century, a stopping point for vessels carrying vast raw goods from the interior of the United States along the Erie Canal. When construction began on the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, the neighborhood of Red Hook was already facing severe economic difficulties. You see, the area's primary industry, that of manual labor, unloading and processing cargo, had increasingly become facilitated by machines, reducing the need for physical bodies drastically. The industry had also primarily been moved to larger plants in New Jersey that could afford the new equipment, so with the tunnel's construction, Red Hook became further isolated from the rest of the borough, leading to a drastic rise in economic strife and crime. The neighborhood quickly became a mafia hotbed, and the shadow of this criminal empire has long haunted the area's reputation. However, in recent years, with the increase of tech entrepreneurs, manufacturing companies, and the public transit options like the New York City Ferry, this neighborhood has been able to get back on its feet. According to the New York State Department of Transportation, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel carries approximately 60,000 vehicles per day between Lower Manhattan and Brooklyn. The Federal Highway Administration logs show that the tunnel has an unmarked designation, Interstate 478. The I-478 assignment was to be given to the Westway Project, a 4.2-mile superhighway planned along the route of the current West Side Highway. When the project was canceled in 1985, the I-478 designation was shortened to the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel and its approaches, making I-478 a spur from I-278. Beginning in the late 1990s, after nearly a half-century of service, the tunnel received the first significant rehabilitation in its history, including a $100 million effort to install a new ceiling and new lighting, an effort conducted by MTA Bridges and Tunnels. In 2001, the Battery Parking Garage also received a $44 million makeover. Additionally, in 2002, MTA Bridges and Tunnels completed a $55 million project to rehab the tunnel superstructure, roadway, and drainage system. This project addressed the deterioration of the roadway slab in both tubes of the tunnel. Tunnel leak repairs and wall tile replacement was also performed. And importantly, that year, the agency completed a $10 million rehab of the vent buildings. The final part of the project, completed in 2003, involved a $35 million installation of new pumps, exhaust fans, fire standpipe, waterline valves, variable message signs, and control and signal systems. During the 9/11 attacks, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel provided an essential service by allowing the fire department to receive help from their Brooklyn divisions. One fearless firefighter strapped all his gear to his body and ran off, making it from Brooklyn to the World Trade Center via the tunnel. The dynamics of this tunnel changed as well. For more than 1 month after September 11, 2001, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel was closed to all traffic except emergency vehicles. When the tunnel reopened, MTA Bridges and Tunnels and the New York City Department of Transportation imposed new restrictions as a part of a larger-scale effort to reduce congestion in Manhattan below 63rd Street. For nearly 6 months after that, inbound traffic was restricted to buses during rush hours with the closure of the West Side Highway through Lower Manhattan. Also, the tunnel's ventilation system was completely upgraded, and now the ventilation chambers in Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Governor's Island are so powerful that they can entirely replenish the tunnel with fresh air every 90 seconds. Even so, these upgrades were no competition for the challenges ahead. The tunnel was closed before Hurricane Sandy arrived in the fall of 2012. During the storm surge, it was completely flooded. The situation was so dire that some 86 million gallons of water had to be pumped out before it could be reopened, nearly 2 weeks after the storm. In the days leading up to the hurricane, New York decided on the side of caution and closed down the tunnel. It was a good thing they did. When the storm reached the city, it completely battered the tunnel, filling it with gallons of dark, murky water. It took 2 weeks for the water to be pumped out. Astonishingly, the city reworked the ventilation chambers to circulate the water up and out of the tunnel. Despite the incredible amount, they were able to bring almost 10,000 gallons out every minute. So the city reopened the connection 2 weeks later without a hitch. 2012 would go on to be an interesting year for the tunnel altogether, as in that year, it was formally renamed. While most people still call the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel by its original name, it was recently renamed to the Hugh L. Carey Tunnel to honor the 51st governor of New York in a ceremony on October the 22nd, 2012. The above ceremony was attended with much fanfare, including guests such as New York State Lieutenant Governor Robert J. Duffy, Mayor Bloomberg, former Governor Cuomo, MTA chairman, and members of the Carey family. As with many structures in the city though, the original name tends to stick. So while driving in New York, you should be on the lookout for signs towards the Hugh L. Carey Tunnel, but most often, New Yorkers still refer to it as the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. So how does the tunnel make its money? Well, there are tolls to enter. As of April 11, 2021, drivers pay $10.17 per car or $4.28 per motorcycle for tolls by mail. E-ZPass users with transponders issued by the New York E-ZPass Customer Service Center pay $6.55 per car or $2.85 per motorcycle. Open road cashless tolling started on January the 4th, 2017. The toll booths were dismantled and drivers could no longer pay cash at the tunnel. Instead, cameras and E-ZPass readers are mounted on new overhangs on the Manhattan side. A vehicle without E-ZPass has a picture taken of its license plate and a bill for the toll is mailed out to the car's owner. Lastly, in 1997, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel made its on-screen debut in the film Men in Black, starring Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. The, quote, Ellis Island of intergalactic alien immigration is housed in one of the 4 ventilation buildings that constantly pump and redistribute air throughout the tunnel. You may remember Will Smith walking into a building with huge fans on his way down to the headquarters. Those fans had a purpose beyond looking cool. They make sure you do not suffocate when commuting from Brooklyn. The Empire State is well known for its many engineering marvels, and the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel is one of them. Connecting Brooklyn's Red Hook neighborhood with Battery Park in Manhattan, flowing underneath the East River, it brings over 20 million vehicles across each year, and is a truly magnificent modern marvel. So thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to catch our new videos every Thursday and Saturday, and definitely check out our tunnel playlist. Until next time, this is Ryan Socash, signing off.